Hi, I'm Katie Miranda. I have decided to start a podcast about people who have overcome major challenges in their lives and who have gone on to do great things and manifest what they want. The reason I'm doing this is because my mission is to help people who don't yet realize that even though they have gone through painful times or experiences, that they can turn those situations around and they can end up getting what they want in their lives. I want to hear about how other people are doing this and how they are overcoming major challenges, traumas, and bad experiences and going on to live full and meaningful lives. As we know, everyone experiences hardships in their lives, and I personally believe that it is how we respond to these hardships which determines our outcomes. So, I am going to bring you stories of people who have overcome major challenges so that they will inspire you to overcome your own. I am a jewelry designer, a painter, and an illustrator, and my work is available for sale at www.katiemiranda.com. So now I am going to introduce my first guest, Phillip Reed. Today I have with you my friend, my Kung Fu teacher, and my former coworker, Phillip Reed. Phil is a soldier, a peace officer, a VFX producer, a screenplay writer, an actor, a stunt performer, a motion capture actor. And if you have seen Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, some of the motion capture, the fight scenes at the end, that was Phil. He is an action and fight choreographer and one of the last living legends of a very secretive art, Wu Shaolin Kung Fu. So I met Phil while we were both working as game testers at Sony, a job which we both hated. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Phil's going to tell you about how we met. And the reason I'm interviewing Phil is because he has been through some very painful times and experiences, including a very recent near-death experience that happened just a few weeks ago. So we're going to talk about that. But first, Phil, can you tell us the story of how we met at Sony?
Yep, it's one of my favorites. So Katie and I, we did not enjoy working at Sony. It wasn't like the best place for us in that moment. But we were in a particular room in Sony where we were doing testing, and I looked over and I saw this girl in this white dress that was beautiful, and I believe the hair was blue at the time, and I thought this woman is gorgeous. And it was just amazing, one, to see a beautiful woman in a game test environment. But I was listening to something on the TV that was really a little loud. And this gorgeous woman in the white dress just looks over and says, "Can you turn that down?" And I was like, "Whoa." And I remember when you said that, I just thought, this woman is going to be my friend for life, because nobody at Sony would ever speak to me that way, because I guess I came off as intimidating or whatever. But to you, Katie, I was none of that. And it just made me so happy, because it was so nice to see someone who had conviction and strength enough to come and just really speak to me. So it made me really happy. And I know most people, for whatever reason, were intimidated by me, even though I did nothing to intimidate people. So it was always odd.
It was mostly the men at Sony, and Sony was mostly men. It was like 90% men, at least the game testing department. And yeah, that's how we met. That was about 18 years ago. And the last time I saw you, you emceed at my wedding. And now Phil lives in Kenya with his wife, Yvonne, and their daughter, Eula. So you've got a lot of stories, Phil, and some of them are pretty wow. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna let you speak for yourself, but one of the stories I'd like you to tell um, is a story from when you were a little kid, uh, about what happened when the wrong guy in your neighborhood picked on you.
Uh, okay, okay. So this is a story I really like to tell and share with my students in Kung Fu across the world, because this is the beginning of my journey way back in 1967. I lived in Dayton, Ohio, West Side, the ghetto, a pretty rough neighborhood, and I'm the youngest of 12 kids. So it's easy to misplace one of them when you're busy having life as parents. So I got really well known with ladies who worked the night, and they treated me like I was their own child because they didn't have children of their own. And sometimes they would be very nice. I would do things to help them, carry groceries home, rake yards, whatever. And there's one particular lady named Jackie who was asking me to carry her groceries home. And she'd always been nice to me. But this particular day, for whatever reason, as I'm carrying her groceries home, she gives me a $5 bill, $5. And in 67, that might as well have been like $500. So I'm holding this and we're just in front of her place. And her fellow, who she works for, comes out of the place and he looks at her and he looks at me and he says, "Oh, you're giving the business to the kids now." And then all I remember is he snatched that $5 bill out of my hand and hit me as hard as he could. I fell to the ground and I took off running. I went home and Steve and David, down to keep Kevin, Judy, nurses, everybody. I just told them what happened and the house emptied. My older twin brothers got there first, and then my oldest brother got there, and they dealt with him. Uh, but when my father came home, the house was kind of quiet, which is rare for 12 kids. And he asked what had happened. They tried to explain to them what had happened and that they had taken care of it. But for my father, that wasn't enough. And my father was a big 6'2" Dakota Sioux, really angry First Nations man. So he went to the fellow's house, and we were all on the street waiting downstairs. And we heard my father's shotgun go off, which we all freaked out. We thought that's it. And then we hear my father dragging this man down the stairs. He throws him on the sidewalk, and there's no blood, there's no bullet, there's no nothing. But my father had shot at him, and he said, "If you ever touch one of my kids ever again, that's it for you. It's over." So after that was done, I was really scared. I was really afraid. And my father, in a rare moment of caring, asked me if I was okay. And I said, "No, I'm scared and I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't ever want to feel like this." And he agreed to take me to his job site where I got introduced to a very nice Chinese man who was barely taller than me, and I'm only 6. But when he looked at me, he told my father, "Oh, yeah, I can teach him." I had no idea what was really going on in that moment, but he introduced the man as Fred Wu, said that he teaches Kung Fu in Columbus, Ohio, and he would do these things to help me not be afraid again. So in that moment, I thought, that's great. Kung Fu is cool. And that's how my Kung Fu journey started. And I've been practicing Kung Fu now from 1967 to today, current.
So, one of the things that you have achieved is you have achieved the title of Grandmaster in Kung Fu, which is it's like the highest level you can achieve, right?
Second highest.
Second highest level. And so I want to do a little time travel. We have you at 6 years old in Dayton, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
You just got punched in the face by this pimp. And then
Yep.
fast forward to what was it, like 10 years ago when you had your grandmaster test?
No, I had my grandmaster's test in the late 90s.
Oh,
Now I took the final test, which is the highest, which is called the Legends test.
okay,
And they
legend.
call me Phil Tai Sigong, which is the highest title, which I achieved just 10 years ago.
Okay, so you're a legend now, which is the highest level you can achieve. And so most kids when they enroll in martial arts, you know, they do it for a few years. It's a way for them to get out that excess energy, re-channel that energy. But you stuck with it till you reached the title of legend. What was it about your teacher, Dr. Wu, or what was it about you that gave you the patience and the dedication to go through all that?
So when I first started learning from Dr. Wu, it was interesting times, and as I watched and learned from him, like my first year of training with him was really difficult because I only learned one thing. I learned a horse dance, and I stayed in horse dance literally for a year. Class was a half hour, and if I ever fell out of the horse dance, he would pop me with a stick to make me get back in the horse dance.
What's
Every
horse
now and then,
dance? Can you
so
show
the horse
horse dances?
the no the horse dance literally is like you're sitting in a chair without being in a chair. So it is an amazing. It is the most common stance in almost all of martial art. But as I stayed in that stance, he would come out and he would show me different movements in kung fu, and then he would go back to his office where he would work. After a year, he came out and he just said to me, "Show me all the kung fu you know." So I just adopted the horse stance, and he looked at me. So then I started doing the kung fu he was showing in front of me, which was really basic, and he seemed to appreciate that I remembered all of that. But then, as he was turning away from me, I continued on with kung fu that he hadn't shown in front of me. But when I stayed in a horse stance, I used to look at a mirror that looked at a glass that reflected him in his office so I could see him doing kung fu. So for a year, sitting in that stance, I had nothing to do. So for me, it was like watching television and learning kung fu. But because of the mirror relationship, I was doing it backwards from him. And he was like, "Who taught you that?" I'm like, "Oh Lord," back to the horse stance. And then I said, "You did." And he said, "I didn't teach you those things." And then I explained to him, this, and this is how I was able to see you. And then he kind of thought about it and he said, "Okay, I can teach you now. I can really teach you now." Because I think he was surprised for whatever reason, Katie. My memory for Kung Fu is insane. Like I absorb it, I feel it, it becomes part of me. It's like how most musicians remember a song on the piano and they have 50 songs and like every keystroke, every Beethoven, everything, like they don't miss a beat. That to me is how Kung Fu flows through my brain.
So what you're basically stuck in horse stance with him for a year.
Mhm.
You're 6 or 7 years old. Most kids would just say, you know, screw this. You know, I want to go outside and play. What
Okay.
about you was different? Was it the fact that you told your father that you never want to feel like this again? Was it your commitment to that, or what was it?
So Kung Fu was really empowering for me. I mean, I started to get stronger and stronger even as a kid, and I could tell I was getting better. But the thing that impressed me the most, the reason why I stuck with it, was the man who Dr. Wu was. Uh, this man had a presence and a gift for teaching, and the way he taught me, it didn't feel like the traditional martial art instructors ever. It always felt like someone, for whatever reason, had a kindness and a love for a little boy who was scared. And he wanted that little boy to know he didn't have to be scared anymore. So as I progressed through my learning with him, I got to learn more about him as the man, and more than just the kung fu teacher. And the man I love and appreciated even more than the teacher. He has had such a kindness that I wanted to be him. You know, we as kids we look at people and we want when like I don't like using the word idolize, but I respected him so much that I just wanted to know what it was like, to feel what it was like to be him, to have that presence and that pride and that joy of teaching and being able to show people you can be strong and kind at the same time. Your strength doesn't have to make you mean or a bully. It actually gives you the ability to empower people. And that's why I teach as many people as I can who I feel will be respectful of Wu Shaolin Kung Fu uh, every time I run into the right person. And Katie, that's why I taught you. But when I saw you and I thought this young lady has so much more than she knows. And I would love to teach her even a little bit of what I know, because I know somehow, some way that it's always going to be a part of you, even if it's just in the back of your mind. And that's the conviction I saw when I first met you, when I heard your voice for the first time. And my mind is always thinking Kung Fu. And when I heard you, I just thought, yep, that's gonna be one of my students.
And that was one of the things that helped make working as a game tester at Sony so bearable for me, was that we
Mm,
always had lunch break. We'd go out by the lake, we'd practice kung fu. Me
yeah,
and like, I don't know, you always had five, six, seven other people who came
yeah.
out there. And yeah, so I want to hear about your test for your Legends title,
Oh, yeah.
and I want you to tell me about how that went, and then also would like to know, while you were taking that test, did you think back to Phil Reed as a 6-year-old boy getting punched in the face, and what was going
Uh,
through your head?
so when I took the test, my last test was in Malaysia, August 6th, 2011. And it was the hardest test I'd ever taken in my life. And I've taken some pretty brutal tests. But it was 9 days. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, and I had to go through all the things. I had to go through forms and weapons and meditation and herbal medicines and lineage. I mean, it was really brutal, because even though Dr. Wu is my main teacher, I was also taught by people underneath him. So I had 11 different instructors for this Legends test, and two of them who were already legends themselves. So this was really, really the toughest of all tests. And yes, there was also fighting and sparring, but the whole essence of that test was my ability to show enough humility to all the teachers who have taught me, so that they knew the title that I was trying to achieve was one that I would carry on with respect and be able to show people this is what can happen if you really focus on this thing. I think I used to tell you guys, maybe not you, because I had so many students around the world, but I used to tell a lot of my students, if you have a focus, you will succeed, because you really, really just have to focus. If you're hungry enough, if you want it bad enough, you will escape all the horror that a 6-year-old little boy had to deal with when he was assaulted by this guy. So I focus from 6 until to this very moment here. I am always focusing on being better at the thing I love the most in the world, which is Wu Shaolin Kung Fu, and having students who can teach it the way that I teach, and hopefully earn the respect that I believe and hope that I've earned from my students over the last 54 years.
One thing that I noticed about the way you teach martial arts, and this is different from how a lot of other instructors teach, is you don't have belts and you don't have these tests. And the reason that really appealed to me is because when I've reached out to other teachers, both before I met you and then after you left, you moved to Australia, um, the belt system was always a big part of it. And some of these schools would have on their website, it takes 2 years to achieve black belt. Like, achieving black belt is like the most important thing.
Mm.
and the reason that you do it. It's like you want to achieve this status of black belt, which seems to me, it feels like it's more important than what you learn in between. And you didn't have that in your classes. And I like that. So can you talk about that? Why you didn't have
Okay.
belts and
Yeah. So what you're talking about is the business of martial art, and I don't blame people for that because they need to put food on the table, and it's structured in such a way that those are the foreseeable goals of the people they take on as students. Within Wu Shaolin Kung Fu, there is a SASH system if you want to follow that. There's another system called the band system that's secretive, so your rank is actually hidden under your sleeves. And if you choose to show someone, you can roll it up and say, "This is where I am. I'm Red Sash. I'm a master, whatever." But the system that I started in, and the one that I teach the most of my students to, is called the free flowing system, because I don't want anyone to have the weight of testing or looking over at someone going, "Oh, that person's a black belt, I'm not as good," or, "Oh, that person's a white belt and I'm a black belt, but they're better than me." That's ridiculous. Everyone who does martial art has their own level of what they're going to achieve too. And the way I teach, I work really hard to find out what's in that person that allows them to hit the goals they need for themselves. And a lot of teachers won't take time to learn the intimate details of a student like that. But I think that's a disservice because Dr. Wu took me, a child he didn't have to, and treated me like one of his own. And when I realized that that's the way he taught, that's the way that I always will teach. Because the things you learn about yourself without the restrictions and limitations of tests and sashes are amazing because you're free. And if your mind is able to be free and flow, then and you don't have that tension, the knowledge you gain, you're probably going to retain longer than most people who go through the stress of trying to just maintain a belt system.
yeah, that's a really good point because I did study with someone who did have a belt system after you, and those tests were incredibly stressful, and you had to pay. You know,
Yeah. And then if you fail, you still have to pay.
yeah, yeah, you didn't get a refund. Um, so you you worked for a while as a prison guard,
Oh
and
yeah.
I think that was one another really painful time in your life. And
Yeah.
can you tell us about that and how you ended up getting out of that situation and moving
So
on to better things?
the irony of this one, and my life is long. The irony of this one is um, Kung Fu is the reason why I became a prison guard. I was teaching Kung Fu in Carmel, California. I had a bunch of students who were prison guards. I had an amazing student named Stan Martinez, who was beautiful to watch. He passed away earlier this year, and it breaks my heart to even think about him right now. But he was the person who said to me, "If you're not making enough money, come down to Soledad Prison and be a prison guard. We make good money." And he was right. The money was fantastic. But Katie, I will tell you, it is the worst decision I ever made in my life. When I walked through the door, March 12th, 1984, in that prison, I was young. I was fresh out of the military. I was shredded. I was Bruce Lee built. I had an opinion that was really focused on knowing who I was and what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And I hadn't seen this part of humanity yet that could taint and change how I saw humanity for real. And my first day on the job was horrific. I got into a fight with the Tongan fellow as soon as I stepped onto the corridor floor. The fight was easy. Nobody got hurt. But because people saw in that moment that I could handle myself, instead of being treated like the new cop, I got treated like the old cop and was immediately transferred into the hole. which was terrible for me. I never had a chance to climatize to the crazy, so I was just thrown into it. And unfortunately, even with all my meditation and Kung Fu, I was still young then. Uh, I wasn't able to handle all the things that I saw and dealt with.
What
And
was
I
the
don't
hole?
smoke.
Can you
Huh?
explain that? What was the
The
hole?
whole is where it's called administrative segregation, and the whole is where the worst of the worst of the worst criminals go. So you're really hardcore murderers, killers, rapists, just all around bad people who they're institutionalized. They're never going to get out of prison because that's their life. This is what human beings can become if their situations aren't allowed to elevate above their surroundings as they're growing up. But um, I remember sitting in the wing, the hole, and I was just in there on my first day, and I was in fantastic shape, and I felt a pain in my stomach, and I didn't know it at the time. But my very first day on the job, I developed an ulcer. Now you know this. I don't smoke, drink, use drugs, and I didn't even use bad language before I became a prison guard. I still try not to use it today. But the stress, physical and mental, psychological, wore on me so strongly. I went from a 168-pound kid to a 425-pound man in a year. And my body was broken. And I'll tell you this because everything always comes back around to Kung Fu. Before I started the prison guard job, I went to go see Dr. Wu, and he was like, "Wow, you look great, shredded. Yeah, you've been working really hard." I went to go see him a year later. When I walked into the class, he asked me, "May I help you?" He
Oh,
didn't know who I was. And then when he looked and he saw me smile, he he asked, "What happened to you?" And I told him. I told him prison broke me. It destroyed me. And I'm on the other side. I'm not a prisoner. I'm the guy that's supposed to be looking after them. This man who loved me through all the hell I'd gone through looked at me, and I thought, I'm going to make this old man cry. And I was ashamed, and I was about to walk out. I was like, I was done with Kung Fu. In that moment, I thought, I have finally shamed the man who's more of a father to me than my own father. And then he just looked at me and went, "Well, you still look strong. So I'm going to teach you some Kung Fu that I never would have taught you because I never expected your body to look like this." And I was really happy because he taught me styles I never would have learned because my body changed. He took a horrible negative that was destroying me and turned it into a Kung Fu positive that made me grow even more in my martial studies. Now, thankfully, another good friend of mine in the prison system said, "Well, Phil, if you're going to be fat, you might as well be strong." So, in conjunction with doing Kung Fu, I started doing powerlifting. And what I didn't know, Katie, is how crazy strong I was. So, I started doing powerlifting in conjunction with Kung Fu. Next thing I know, in 2 years of learning how to be a powerlifter, I could squat 700 pounds, I could bench press 550, and I could deadlift 600 pounds in conjunction with Kung Fu practice. So this started to bring me back closer to my center, but I could tell I don't belong here. I don't belong here. Um, so after some really horrific things happened, I survived 5 riots and all kind of crazy stuff. Um, I went home, and as I sat at home one day, I told myself, "No, this isn't me, and I'm not going back," and that's fine. And the only thing, and this is how you and me actually got to meet. The only thing that I did, because I don't smoke, drink, or use drugs, my vice was video games. So I played a lot of video games, and eventually I started working in the video game industry. I worked for Sega of America as a game counselor before Google came along. I got to work in marketing, and I worked for Capcom and R&D. My knowledge of comic books sent me to Japan, so I got to have a ball helping work on amazing, crazy games for those guys, and eventually ended up at Sony doing some really fun stuff. But I wasn't happy there, I like some of the people, but as far as the job I had taken, it wasn't anything that I enjoyed, and you knew that because that's where we met. Uh, but after that, I got really, really lucky, and a really good friend of mine asked me if I wanted to work on a movie called What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams. And I started working in visual effects and special effects, got to work on The Matrix, and ended up jumping around the world. After teaching you, moved to Australia, had a ton of fun working on Happy Feet with George Miller, went over to New Zealand, which is where my entire career started, from acting to commercials to motion capture acting to stunts to fight choreography to working for Peter Jackson, Steven Spielberg. I mean, Del Toro. I was just like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is my life. And the 6-year-old kid in me was loving it because this was another thing that had grown up. You know, TV was a big part of my life as well. So I got to start building all these things that were dreams of mine as a kid. And even though I went through the military years weren't bad, they did help shape me, but the prison guard years destroyed me. But this adventure that I was on now was reminding the child it's not too late. You can still overcome all these adversities. Look what you've done so far. Don't give up. Don't quit. Keep trying. Be strong. Be tough. You're smart. You're courageous. Don't be afraid. It's okay. And if you are afraid, that's okay too. Just get through it. You're going to be okay. And that's where I am now, literally. I now live in Kenya. I have an amazing wife that works in visual effects. I sit here now. I get to do screenplay writing. I've written a TV show with a very brilliant writer named Michael Bronner, who just wrote, he just did the movie The Mauritanian, and he was really unhappy because the director took that movie and destroyed it. It's not supposed to be, uh, and I hate saying it like this, but it's not supposed to be the white guy saving the world type movie, and that's what the director turned it into. It was really, and I wish I could remember the gentleman's name, the Muslim fellow that was held in Guantanamo for so long for no reason, for
Oh,
no reason.
yeah, I know this
Yeah,
story. I haven't seen the movie,
yeah.
but okay.
Well, my co-writer met with him and talked with him, and he wrote this beautiful, beautiful story, and it was a true story. Uh, but then the director turned it into, you know, the Benedict Cumberbatch's character or somebody ends up being the one to give him like the notes to say, here, write these diaries. It
Uh,
wasn't. He just did it himself. He wrote his own Guantanamo
okay.
diaries. He wrote them, but they changed it, and it broke my co-writer's heart that they were doing that to him. But we're having fun writing the things we're writing. He's amazing what he does, and this is that thing that I love about you and me. We have this amazing way of connecting to people that most people just would never see us together. You know, it's like this goth chick and this kung fu dude are going to be all like buddies, and hell yeah, we were, and we still are to this day. And yeah, we've elevated and changed here, there, or whatever. But at our core, we're always going to be those two people who met in that little TV room and became the best of friends. And I will say this to you on your first podcast. I love you, Katie, like a child of mine and a sister of mine, and I always will.
Thank you, Phil. I love you too. I that's like an amazing story from going from the hole as a prison guard to everything you've been doing lately in the last 10 years or so. A lot of times when people are in a stuck situation, whether that's a marriage that is not working or a job or, life situation, they end up taking this abuse or accepting, less than what they could achieve or could have because they don't believe that they deserve any better or they don't believe that they could do any better for themselves. But a lot of times people get to like a certain point in time where they say, that's enough. That's it. Fuck this
Mhm.
shit. I'm not taking one more day of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, you know, that actually happened to me in Palestine once. I'd been working as a nonviolent human rights worker for about 9 months
Mhm.
in the city of Hebron. Um,
Um,
and some adult male Israeli settler came up behind me and punched me in the face. Didn't see him coming. He was with a group of like about two or three other adult men. They started laughing. They walked down the street. There were a couple soldiers present. Soldiers, the Israeli soldiers didn't do anything. I made the decision that day that I was getting out of Hebron. And this was after 9 months of like weekly violence. Um, weekly violence meaning me getting
mhm.
assaulted or attacked, not to mention all the other violence that I witnessed happen to other people, which was much more frequent. Um, so that was one of those points in time for me. Can you tell us what happened when you were a prison guard? Like, did you get to one of those points where you said, you know, fuck this shit? I know you don't swear, but I'm not
Well,
doing this job one more day.
yeah, I mean, it was really my last day, and it was a horrible one. Um, I don't know how graphic I want to be in this story, so I'll simply tell you this. My last day on the job, I was working in the tower. And you know, when you get older, after 10 years of being on the ground, most of us just want to sit in the tower, and that's where you retire for the next 20 years. And I thought, oh my God, this is not my life. I don't want to shoot anybody. This is not me. And I remember I was watching the yard, looking out it over all the convicts. And then I was looking at the other towers to make sure they were looking at the yard. And there was one young lady, very pretty, but she was always on the phone. Inmates can read their lips from a mile away, so she would turn her back on the yard.
She was a
And for
prison guard.
whatever, huh? Yeah, she was a prison guard up in the other tower, across the other side of the yard. So I used my binoculars and I could see her on the phone. And I was like, oh, okay, well, she should be watching her yard. But I'm scanning the yard, and then I kid you not, Katie, it looked like somebody threw a grenade because all of a sudden there was a big circle. Everybody just filled out. And I'm focusing on my binoculars and I'm trying to see what's going on. I can't tell what's going on. Then finally, she felt it. She turns around. She sees it better than me. I hear over my radio, and she's like, man down in the yard. I'm like, what? I can't see it. You know, even when I can't, where am I trying to look? And then eventually people come out and I kind of see what happened. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of messed up. And I've been there for a long time. I'm very sociable, or was very sociable with both the convicts and the correction officers. But the convicts knew me very well, and I knew them very well. And I got a call on my radio, said, Officer Reed, we're going to relieve you. We need you to come down and identify this inmate. I'm like, why? Just get his ID card. Like, no, you need to come down. I'm like, okay. So I go down, I walk through the corridor, I get to the yard, and as I'm walking closer and closer to what's going on in the yard, I see what's happened. So, and I apologize for this, Katie, because I don't normally tell people this story. So what had happened, there was a Cuban who was going to be going home, and he thought it would be funny to screw with the Black Gorilla family's section of the weight yard. And so he got on the weight bench and was pretending to bench and like laughing because he was going to go home that day. And so he was just out there, ha ha ha, ha, gonna go home. That lady in the tower turned her back, and one of the Black Gorilla family guys who makes my muscles look really small was very close to him when he was doing that, and he was curling almost a 100-pound dumbbell. And when the lady turned away, he took that dumbbell and smashed this guy's head flat. And so, yeah, sorry, I don't like telling people this story. So when I got out there, the reason why I had to identify him is there was no face to identify. So I had to identify him by his body. And I'm like, that didn't faze me because I had become pretty cold to stuff. But I got to the point where I looked at him. I said, "Oh yeah, that's Guzman. He's supposed to be going home today." Now they're like, "Okay." So I'm walking back to get his ID card, and um, people start making jokes. They're laughing. The body's not even cold. I mean, honestly, between you and me and everybody listening, he was still kind of jiggling, but he was dead. And I thought, wow, this isn't me. And I kid you not, the next thing I remember, Katie, is picking up my phone at home, and it was a lieutenant saying, "Officer Reed, are you going to do your report?" And I'm like, huh? I don't remember going home. I don't remember getting in the car, nothing. And I still had Guzman's ID card in my hand. I went home. And then I looked at the card and I said, no, I'm not doing the report and I'm not coming back ever again because this just ain't me. I'll
Yeah.
give the card to an officer who lives in Marina, California. I'm done. I'm done. I'm I'm not I'm not that part of humanity that laughs at death. It's not a joke. People's lives matter, and that tore me apart. I mean, it's bad enough that psychologically I was being ripped apart, physically because my body was failing me, and I couldn't figure out how to get all this under control. But when it started to try and rip at my humanity as well, no, I was done. And that's when all my other careers started because I just wanted to have fun for the rest of my life. I didn't want to think about this life as a prison guard and the hell that can be, and then how horrible as human beings we can be. So that's why I left. That was my I've had enough of this moment. Or to quote you, that was my fuck this shit moment. So I didn't want to do it anymore. And I don't, and I didn't. And I still respect what it did to help me understand more about humanity than I ever would if I hadn't experienced it, because it helped me when I'm going through Kung Fu students, what personalities that I will not teach. I can see them a mile away now. I couldn't see them before. There were some people that would come to me wanting to learn knowledge, but I could tell if I taught this person what I know, they have anger issues. They will destroy someone. And I experienced this firsthand, unfortunately, from a Kung Fu brother of mine who I'd known almost since the early days of Kung Fu, who I brought him into Kung Fu in the 70s, and he stayed with it even after I had left. But eventually, he used Kung Fu to murder his girlfriend. Yep. He was very jealous of her. He did a horrible thing. You can find him. Yeah, that's okay. He's in jail. His name's Ronnie Winton, and Dayton, Ohio. And if you Google him, you'll see the horrible thing that he did. But I mean, something broke in him because he wasn't that person. So I don't know what happens in our growth in society, in the neighborhoods we grow up in, what makes us twisted in those regards. I don't know. I know that we can overcome it with the right help, the right people around us, the right advice. And the thing I wish more than anything, Katie, sometimes I wish people would just know it's okay to ask for help. If you're having it bad, ask for help. Talk to somebody, even if it's just a good friend, like my friend Donnie in Alabama. He's probably been my shrink since 1990, and I love him like a brother. But just on this podcast, when people are listening, I hope they hear this. If they don't hear nothing else, it's okay to ask for help, and if you need help, get help, because the best thing you can do is live the best life for yourself so that you can have a good life with other people around you. But get help for you if you need help. Don't be afraid to ask. Hell, call me. call Katie. You know, I don't care. I'll talk to anybody if you really need help.
Phil, what kind of advice you have for somebody who is in a stuck situation and they know inside that it's not for them. It's not like how you put it was it ain't me, right? That's how
Yep,
you
it
put it.
ain't me.
What advice do you have for somebody who wants to get out of that situation, but maybe is too scared or is too used to, we get used to the situation and it's normal and it's what we know and we're scared to like break out. So what would you tell somebody in a situation like that?
Yeah, that's a tough one because that's like the pattern of like the housewife who just gets used to being abused or something, right?
Yeah,
And it becomes the norm.
right.
And that is scary. That is scary because um, I have six sisters, or had six sisters for some of them passed. And I've seen my sisters go through hell. I've seen them go through bad marriages. And I will tell you, because I believe in being as honest as possible. Uh, like I said, my father was not a good man. He was a horrible man. But there were a few moments that he taught me some good things. But he was horrible. He was especially horrible to my older twin sisters. And I hated the things that he did to them. And I hated him when he died. Uh, and I shed no tear for that man. As much as he helped me when I was 6, I learned as I grew older there was not a good man in there. He was lost in alcohol and anger and hatred and a bunch of other things that destroyed whatever he used to be. So here's the thing I'll say: if you're in a really bad situation, if you're really stuck, first you have to admit it. You have to realize, yeah, I'm stuck and I'm afraid. Uh, the hardest thing is fear is not there to stop you. Fear is there to make you move. That's why you have fight or flight. And if you ain't fighting somebody, you better figure out how to run to get away from the thing that is causing you to have this feeling. So all I can tell people is once you realize and recognize that you are afraid, you have to start asking yourself, what can I do to get out of the situation that makes me afraid? And you can try and do the most um, common thing, which is talk to the person or persons or thing that make you afraid. But I'm pretty sure that that is just going to lead to being more afraid because any person that makes you afraid is going to be even more angry about that. So then you have to ask yourself, now how do I get out of this situation without the person who scares me knowing? And I've seen many scenarios play out. I've seen wives get taken by their mothers back to their countries because they needed to get out of bad relationships. I've seen grandmother in New Zealand fly to the UK and literally kidnap her daughter and her grandson to get them away from an abusive man. I mean, people will take action, but again, the whole the whole essence of getting out of any situation is you have to first acknowledge it and you have to find that courage through that fear that allows you to say, I have to take the steps to get out of this because if I don't, this is my life. And then you have to ask yourself, is this really the life you intended? Is this the life you chose when you were a child and thought, ooh, I can't wait till I'm abused or, beaten. Oh, yay. No, nobody wants that. Nobody deserves that. And any person who's doing that, they need help. And that's the hard part, right? But you got to get away from that in any way you can, whether it's, escapism, shelters, people who are your friends who can help you. But anybody who's going through anything like that has to be able to admit it first and then take all the steps, like contact the right people, the authorities, therapy, psychiatrists. get help for the person who's being the abuser, because they're hurting too, but not in the way they're hurting whoever it is they're hurting. That's my old man advice.
Okay, thank you. Um, that's great advice. And while you were talking, I was just, it came up in my head a few situations where, I also said, I've had enough. I got to get out of this situation. Um,
Mm.
and I was very, very scared. I was afraid that, if I left the situation, my future was going to be even worse. But it turned out to be a lot better. And I'm probably going to talk about this a little bit later in future podcast episodes because I hope it will help people. But let's talk about your near death experience now. That was like what, two,
So
3 weeks ago?
that was 4 weeks ago,
4 weeks ago.
and it was, yeah, that was a stunner for me,
I want to hear what
because
happened
even though,
and then what you learned from it.
okay, okay,
All right.
so I mean, I'm a big fellow, but I'm normally in pretty good shape. Um, and I fought through a lot of depression in Canada because I was trying to figure out how to get to a happier place. And I got there. I finally got there. Living in Kenya, doing what I'm doing, it's fantastic. So I got happy, and I got a dog and a cute puppy, and my daughter and my wife. And I thought, let's go get more fit, Phil. Let's go for a walk. Let's get these pounds down and get back to that sexy kid. Here, I'll show you. Remember this kid? Yay. Let's get back to that sexy kid. So I was taking my dog for a walk with my daughter and my wife, and then all of a sudden I stopped right in my tracks, Katie. I froze because I had a pain that was like an elephant sitting on my chest. It felt like the world's strongest man was hitting me in the teeth with a sledgehammer, and I couldn't catch a breath. And I just stood still. I waited to die. But I told myself, if I take one more step, I'm going to die. So I stood still, just waiting to fall down because I didn't want to step. My wife, God bless her, I love her, but her way of encouragement is, "God, let's go." I'm like, "No, I love you, but no, I'm not moving." Now, for whatever reason, my little girl, 9 years old, said in the sweetest of voices, she says, "Come on, Daddy, let's walk home. It's not far, and I'll hold your hand." And that, I don't know, for whatever reason, it gave me the will to take another step. And she held my hand, and I managed to get home. And I felt a little better. Not great, but a little better. But being a man, and most of us men, we are very stupid when it comes to our health. I didn't go directly to the doctor. I got on the plane, flew to California, went to Amsterdam, came back to Kenya, and then thought, I should go see a doctor. So I finally did, and they told me uh, after sending me through uh, a tube going up to my arteries and shooting dye through my veins that my heart had two blockages that I wasn't aware of. And they said the only reason I was alive is because apparently I was so athletic in my youth that the left side of my heart was so strong that it was just keeping everything going. And one side of my heart just wasn't filling up with blood. So the reason why I couldn't step or walk or catch breath or was always winded was only one side of my heart was doing the job that the whole heart was supposed to do. So eventually they put me into surgery. They ran a tube through my artery from the wrist all the way up into my heart, and they were putting the stents in. And I remember feeling everything, which I didn't think I was supposed to. And I was laying down, and I was trying to explain to the doctor I could feel everything, which he was like, "No, you can't."
Were you
And I'm
under
like, "Yeah, I feel
local?
it."
Were you under
Huh?
local? Were you supposed to be under local anesthesia?
They shot me in the wrist. They slit my wrist, so they shot me with just anesthesia here so they could slit my wrist
Uh-huh.
and push the tube in. But other than that, there was nothing else anywhere in me.
Oh, okay.
So I told him, yeah, and they want you awake because they need to tell you to breathe and hold your breath and all that. So I'm listening, but as he's pushing this thing through me, I'm trying to tell him, and then the room starts to slowly spin, and I'm thinking, oh crap, yep, this is it. This is where I go, and well, at least this is not in front of my daughter like how it could have been. And I remember as I laid there, all of a sudden I saw five, like, just really small but bright light blue lights. And they were like right in my eyes. And then they pulled away from me and I could feel me leaving my body. And then I was gone. I mean, I thought, wow, this is how you die. Okay. And I remember my last thought was, I just don't want to do this to my daughter Eula. She deserves to have her dad around a little bit longer. And I just wish this wasn't happening. And then for whatever reason, Katie, why I don't know, um, I felt myself come back. The room stopped spinning. The nurse next to me was putting oxygen in my nose. And I'm just like, what the hell was that? And they were just like, are you okay? Okay. I'm like, I don't know. But then I felt the thing still pushing, and the doctor, like, when he pushed the stent through, I felt like, oh, but still not a full release of breath. And I heard the other doctors going, okay, this isn't long enough. Everybody was like rushing. I'm like, what's going on? And I can feel my heart just like, we don't know what's about to happen right now. So they did another cut in my wrist, and they shoved another tube in, and they rushed another stent and bumped it up against the first stent and pushed it further. And then when that happened, everything changed. Like I could breathe probably for the first time since 2007, when I remember riding a bike in Thailand and kicking Yvonne's butt on the bike. So I was like, yeah. And I like, this is amazing. What did I do so horrible that I allowed myself to become this? And I know it was a lot of fighting depression and gaining weight and being tired and not being strong enough to say, you know what, I need to take care of me. I've been doing so much here for you. But if I don't start taking care of me, I'm gonna die. Uh, and I remember the next day going through, like, ICU. I felt great. I felt bad being in a room where everybody else sounded like they were suffering, and I just wanted to go outside and try to walk fast and then maybe run. But I do remember when I sat in that bed, I thought, well, Phil, here you go. You're 60, and now you're probably going to live another 60. And I told myself, I'm going to live to be 120. I know I am. And now I really know I am, because I have a new lease on life, and I am trying to be better. I'm trying to eat better. I'm trying to stay calmer. I mean, I still probably explode every now and then on something that irritates me because traffic in Kenya is horrible, et cetera, et cetera. But mostly, uh, I'm just trying to be better at being nice to me, being better to me. And my wife understands this completely, because she told me, wow, I forgot what you used to be like. And I'm keeping this, Phil, which makes me pretty dang happy, because I'd like to be kept. She's pretty cool.
And when you told me this story the first time when we were talking on the phone, I told you there's this book called I've Decided to Live to Be 120. Yeah, I've got the
Yeah.
audiobook. I'm listening to it. Um, yeah, so it's kind of a funny coincidence. So your biggest takeaway from this is that you decided you need to be better at taking care of Phil Reed.
Yep. I have to take care of me. I'm such a giver, to a fault, and I've known this my whole life, Katie. Um, when I was a kid, I remember telling my mother once, like, it was after Martin Luther King got shot, and everybody was crying. And I asked my mom, "Why is everybody? What happened?" And she told me. And I said, I wish people wouldn't be sad because I'm happy all the time. And if I could, I would take away everybody's sickness in the world and everybody's sadness in the world for a day, just so they could feel good. And my mother said, "You better be careful what you wish for, Philip." And I'm like, "Okay, mom, but I understand, but I just want people to be happy." And I think that's been at the core of me my whole life. I want people to be happy. And if I can help in that, I'm okay with that. Now, as after this experience, I'm still okay with trying to make people happy, but I'm going to look out for number one first, and then I'll see if number two can come on board. But I'm taking care of me now because I got a lot of living left to do. A little girl to teach kung fu, and a couple of TV shows and movies that I need to write. One I want to choreograph, one I want to act in, and a couple of reality TV shows involving technology in Kenya and some cool people. So, like I said, I need that extra 60 years now. I got a lot of stuff to do.
So Phil, did you, when you had that out of body experience, what did the doctors tell you, like clinically, what happened to you? Did you die? Were you dying? Did your heart stop, or like what happened?
Yeah, yeah, but only so it was so short. It was like seconds. Like he was still pushing the stent through when all this was happening, and she was when she was giving me the oxygen. I think they were about to pull me out from under the theater to start shocking me. But I came back. I came back so fast. Like I looked at her and said, "What are you doing?" And she looked stunned that I spoke. Like this dude should be dead. But he had managed to push the stent through in that moment before they're going to pull me out of the theater because they still have me like connected with the tube. So they were like, all right, they have to move the tube. They have to move me. I'm underneath this screen that is literally looking through my chest, X-raying it, so they can see what's going on in my heart, so they don't lose me. But it was so fast. But I was gone for maybe just 3 seconds. It was like like
Uh-huh.
just that fast.
Uh-huh.
But I was gone, and then I'm back, and it's the weirdest feeling because I shouldn't say it like this, but it actually felt good, other than the sadness of my daughter, you know. But what I felt was everything leaving, like every pain, like every physical pain,
Uh-huh.
but the mental was there because I could feel myself focusing on my daughter,
Uh-huh.
and I think that's why I fought so hard to come back because I love that little girl with all my heart. She means the world to me, and I love empowering women. You know this already, and I'll be doggone if I don't get to empower my little girl to be as badass as you, Katie. And that's the truth.
She'll be even better. Because I only had a few years with you, unfortunately. Um, but what you were saying before is that you really want to make people happy. What you did for me was gave me self-confidence that I could
Hmm.
take care of myself.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad because I used to read your mails from Palestine when you would write them, and my heart would just be like, please, 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 let this young lady be okay. I knew how tough you were. I knew you were a fighter, and you're still a fighter. And yet, you're a fighter who chose not to fight, which is one of the hardest things in the world to do. Be a fighter and not fight. Whew. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
I was very afraid. No, I know, and I'm glad you didn't. And you know what's funny? You were speaking about some of the tough times you were going through. and you needed to get the heck out of some situations. But I don't think you don't remember, but I was there. This is one of those moments where I popped in to visit you, and I can't remember where it was. It was one of your places in Oakland, maybe. I mean, you jumped around a lot,
Yeah,
but I
I was
remember
moving every
coming
couple
coming
years
to visit
for a
you.
while.
Yeah, and I remember talking to you, and this is when you had shown me this really cool painting of Aaron Thornton, one of my kung fu students and your friend, and in this house. And I remember feeling like really feeling you, and I thought, oh man, Katie's having it tough right now, and she's trying to make some decisions. And you were really good at talking to me about things, but you also are really good at holding stuff to your chest because you are a thinker, you're methodic, you're analytical, and you were trying to figure out how do I get through this stuff.
I think that
And
was when
I
my
know
mom
you
died.
did. Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
my mom died.
And, and I was like, ooh, you're gonna be okay. This much I knew. And when I came to your, not your wedding, when I came to your marathon, when you ran that marathon and we were late, and I'm so sorry about that. But when I saw you sitting there
You were there at the
after,
end.
huh?
You were there at the end. That's what mattered.
Yeah, and I remember we went to go have food because you needed to eat. You were just, but you amazed me because me and Yvonne were both like, this girl just ran a marathon. She's not really sweating, and she doesn't smell. So how did she pull that
Well, I'm glad I didn't smell.
off? No, you didn't. And it was amazing. But I just know that that toughness that got you through that marathon and all the things that have shaped you your whole life are what's going to keep pushing you way past the point you are now. Uh, I look forward to seeing what you eventually become because you ain't done yet, and I know you're not. So I'll see you. I'll probably be 100, and you'll be like whatever, but I'll be there, and you can
Yeah.
you can have me again as your 50th guest on the podcast.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Phil. This has been great, and I hope people I hope people are able to take some benefit from it. And hopefully
Yeah.
I hope my future guests are as interesting as you are.
Well, if they're not, just call me back,
All right.
or we'll interview them together.
Yeah, I'll have you on again. All right. Thank
Um,
you, Phil.
Katie, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure seeing you.